Hi, I had some internet shenanigans earlier, which is why we are a little late. Um, Sorry about that. But we are live today. And what we're discussing today is the end of the Empire series. So, when I started the Empire series, I made available this form where people could submit their empires, and I would go through it, and then I'll pick my favorite one. Hey, Lupex, good to see you guys. Good to see you. Yeah, so I hope everybody's had a good weekend, and I hope that you are ready to go through some empires. Hey, Aiden, good to see you. And yeah, so we'll go through them. Leave, put in comments what you think, questions you would have if you encountered this in a story. And then at the end, I'll announce the empire that I liked best and the empire that I will therefore send a copy of my book, The Hidden Blade, to. So yeah, that's what we're doing today. The Ancient Lore series has started on Tuesday, and I actually just filmed the last one of that series today. So that's a 6-episode series, and it's going to run through for the next 6 weeks. So I hope you're all looking forward to that series. And hi, Camille, good to see you too. Okay, so without further ado, this is the first empire that was submitted. This is in no particular order. It's just in the order that I received them. So, so this is the Empire of Aos Talu. And in this empire is very interesting in that there appears to be humans that are conquering a bird people. Okay, so in their pioneering phase, they first encounter these talking bird people, the Nigere, that keep to their own flocks. And basically, the city of Demabwe, I think I'm pronouncing that right, rose up as a powerhouse of a human empire, conquering, bird flocks and so on. And then in its conquest phase, it spread itself across the continent in a very, very fast manner, because probably it didn't encounter that many strong oppositions, although there is obviously in the modern day and age, mentions of dark magic and all kinds of shenanigans like that. And they did not get on well with these bird people, the Nigere, and the bird people suffered the kind of brunt of the empire's conquest. Okay. And then it this empire, this world builder skipped over the commerce and so on phases and just gave me the decline phase, when there was a Queen Morga who was the leader of the empire, and she clearly lost kind of the mandate of heaven equivalent. She was unpleasing to the god Mawari, and there was a hero with a placeholder name Beowulf, which stood out to me as like the one non kind of African inspired name in here. But there was a hero Beowulf who led the rebellion against the Demabwe Empire, and they eventually killed this empress, and that led to the final kind of decline as the empire split apart and created these little distinct kingdoms. So, what I liked about this empire is that there is a very clear mythological feel to it, right? It feels like something that could have legitimately happened. Not only that, but it also has a very nice fantasy element in that you immediately have at least a bird people, a non-human species. What I would like to see more of in this, what I would suggest to the world builder that they do, is expand on what did the empire offer at its height. At the moment, it's very much the rise of the empire and the fall of the empire. I would like to understand what they offered to their client nations at its height. So that would be where I would suggest that the world builder needs to expand a little, because right now it feels like the empire just conquered and fell, which, I mean, it can happen, but that would be my process. Like, what did they trade in? What made them great? Was there anything that made them great, or did they just fall apart? Okay. So then we come to our second submission, and that is the Nomadic Empire. It didn't have a name, so I just gave it the Nomadic Empire. And it struck me as I was reading this that it's semi-Roman-ish. Okay, so let me explain. This empire, in its pioneering and conquest phase, it was a pastoral horse culture that's forced out of their lands by an even more powerful invader, and then they moved to lands occupied by agricultural farmers. And there's relative harmony between the two groups, but obviously the way that these things happen, eventually there is a war over resources, and the horse culture is victorious. And the reason why I said this was Roman-ish is because that's kind of the origin story of Rome, right? They lost the war of Troy, and they buggered off to the Seven Hills. And in the Seven Hills, there was the whole incident with Romus and the Remulus, and the founding of Rome and so on. But anyway, so basically the horse culture is victorious, and it moves into a culture based on slavery. And then we have our commerce, affluence, and intellect. So there's a population expansion after the horse guys have won. Hey, Matthew, how you doing? So the horse guys have won, and but now there's less fertile lands available, right? So we've got this expansionistic empire that starts to raid their neighbors, and they start developing new cash crops with wealth generation and new technologies, especially in like the seafaring areas. And they start developing sciences and schools and so on in a very typical kind of empire expansionistic form. And then this becomes a love of pleasure that leads to more and more excess, with an appetite for wealth that leads the people to cheat each other and neighbors to see each other as rivals and enemies. And the country, assuming their own greatness and superiority, engages in a war of expansion and fails. And that then leads to the decline of the empire, and they are forced to relinquish their empire. What I liked about this is there is a clear understanding of kind of the, empire's growth, and it's becoming like a force of, technology and study and all of these things. All of this is part of that. Where I think I would like to see more in this empire is that I would like to see more fantasy elements here. So what is the impact of fantasy on this empire? This empire feels like something that could absolutely have existed in our world, right? This could have been a thing that existed in our world. But where is the fantasy? Where is, what is the impact of magic on this empire? What is the impact of any fantasy elements? Are there any fantasy creatures? Things like that. Also, the fact that they are horse people doesn't seem to feature beyond the initial creation of the empire. So they come from a horse culture, but that's it. There's no further elaboration on that horse culture, and it doesn't seem to have an impact on the empire. So that is what I would look at if I was the world builder. I try and bring that horse element in more. Like, what impact does their original horse culture have on the rest of the empire? And I'd also try and weave in the fantasy elements into the empire, whether it's in their trade or in their creation of the empire or whatever else. So that would be my approach. That would be my suggested place for increasing this empire. But I think, like, politically wise, this is a solid start to the empire's kind of growth and decline. I would certainly say that this is a very valid upward and downward flow. Hey, Biomatador. um, all right, then we come to the Wush'oq Empire. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I never know what to do with those little thingies, those uh, little commas that you have drifting in the air. I know exactly what to do with an umlaut because, obviously I speak Swedish, so uh, I just pronounce it the way a Swede would. But but those little weird things always puzzle me. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? Ignore it? Put a pause there? Anyway, so this empire was actually, like, quite well thought out, and there's a lot of kind of mythicness about this. So there's a small tribe who found their initial city state at the lake called Usa, and they are following a god of war. And they are quite intense on their magic, and they become essentially a magocracy, an aristocracy of mages, um, because the nobility is acquired by those who touched by magic, and they basically start breeding to ensure that magic stays within their bloodlines. And obviously, this creates a massive power imbalance, which then results in a magocracy, which slowly begins to expand. And indeed, during the conquest, they start to defeat their neighbors, and they start to basically expand outwards. And then they encounter some additional civilizations, including an oligarchy of merchants. I got very strong Rome, Carthage vibes here. I was like, oh, this feels like that period of history. There's a militant empire and there's a merchant empire, and the two are edging on one another. But basically, they start to expand and they conquer their neighbors with their war and their magic power-based culture. And I like very much here how the magic and how the culture of, like, war and power and magic ties into the spread of empire in this creation. Then, in terms of their commerce, so now they've got this empire and they're starting to get their commercial flow going on. They, um, the magic, from what I can figure out, and bear in mind, all I have is the empire documents here, so I don't know exactly how the magic works. But from what I can figure out from the empire documents, their magic is based on these magic stones, which have to be mined. Okay, so the empire obviously has got way more control over these magical stones, and to their east they manage to have control of their ocean, and they have a flow of good that comes through the ocean, and basically these magic gemstones form the core of their trade as an empire, and this makes the empire very wealthy. And then you start having magic stones and magic abilities becoming part of the main cultures. So you start having additional cultural influences, and you start having magic used in building things, and you start having magic become more of a commodity and less of a rarity, right? And so mages have these like abilities to get way more wealth and access to technology through magic. And of course, they start developing things for the non-magic population as well. And this, of course, alleviates farming stress and um, other tedious work, and it allows people to expand into arts and poetry and writing and so on. The one thing that I read here that I was like, I'm not sure. So it says here that any traces of slavery is gone, and I'm like, okay, but why? Because the reason why we ultimately, the reason why slavery ultimately died with us was because of the growing principles of the Renaissance of equality, liberty, and so on. But in a society where there are clearly people who are born better, right? At this point, I'm not seeing the aristocracy being replaced, right? So I don't see that growth of liberty, equality, egalitarianism that came out of the Renaissance that led to the judgment that, you cannot enslave another if you're going to say that all men are equal. Then you can't do that. So I feel like here that to me um, is a missing element. I would like to see what drove that growth of the principles that changed the empire's morals in such a drastic way. So that is the one thing I would like to explore there. But then in terms of, decadence, as it normally does, there's a growing gap in wealth because you still have the mages who are still richer. They're the only guys who can access this incredible power. Um, and basically, they start losing access to mines. That mines are now, the magic stones are overmined, and so the poorer mages lose access to them. And hey, Alex. um, and it really, you can see like the decline of it happening as the mines are deplenished and people lose access to their their magic. And then of course, and yeah, I mean, this is the other big thing. Inbreeding is a problem, as it says there in that last sentence, because if you have an aristocracy based on mages, and everybody is, doing the devil's tango in order to generate more mage children, you can indeed very easily end up in a massively inbred situation that can have very, very negative side effects. All right. And then, decline eventually. Um, they don't have access to these magical stones anymore. And this weakness is taken advantage of by tribes on the far south. Again, I got some Rome vibes here. Instead of having the Germanic tribes come from the north, we have some tribes coming up from the south to smack our empire in the face as they lose their kind of military might. And the empire eventually collapses. And so the mines have been completely diminished. I enjoyed this empire very much. I thought it was well thought out. I like the fact that you have the elements of the magic very deeply embedded in both the rise and fall of the empire, as well as the stones that are mined. I thought that was very well thought out and very well worked in. The one place where I would tease out a little more is what happened during that intellect phase to cause the empire to have such a dramatic change in morality. Like, where is that Renaissance type of mindset coming from that they start regarding people as equal? So that would be my one place to work on. And you are very welcome, Alex. I really did enjoy the Empire. All right, then we come to the Enkarian, or the Restavian, as they renamed themselves, Empire. And dragons for the win is there my note on this. So let's talk about this briefly. So this city-state basically domesticated dragons. I mean, that's a great start. If you're gonna start an empire somewhere, domesticating dragons is a class place to kick it off. And so they were actually at that point somebody else's vassal, but presumably domesticating dragons allowed them to kick out their previous conqueror. And then during their own imperial kind of phase, they started to expand beyond themselves, and they invaded other countries. They installed some military juntas there, and so on. My problem here, like, I enjoyed this empire. I thought it was fine, but I wanted to know more about the dragons. So for me, when it opened up with the dragons, I was like, yes, Dragon Empire. But then the dragons kind of seemed to fade a little into the background, and I would like to have more of a focus on the dragons, especially during the conquest age. Like, did they encounter other armies that also have dragons? Do they have dragon riders? Is that their nobility? Like, yeah, I would have liked to have more here about the fantasy elements. Then in the commerce, affluence, and intellect phases, so here they had an economic boom, they have agrarian exports, they start introducing universal healthcare and public education. The empire was pretty isolationist. So here I had some issues. I'm not sure that empires are generally speaking. I mean, the Chinese were isolationist at one point, but it wasn't during their height. It was during their decline phases. So uh, I was dodgy about this. I was also a little dodgy about universal healthcare. I mean, public education I can get behind. Okay, so public education goes back into the past a long way. But universal healthcare is a pretty modern thought process. And I have no problem with you introducing it into your culture, into your, medieval culture or whatever. But I would like to understand a reason for it. I would like to see where those ideas came from and what drove them to become top of mind for kind of public consciousness. Um, and but yeah, so that was the commerce, and then the decadence. The empire lost its monarchy and went into an oligarchy, which was then overthrown, and you had a mixed system of aristocracy, monarchy, and democracy. Yeah, so with this empire, I enjoyed the dragons, and I thought that was a really good start to it. And the flow seemed legit, like the flow of empire seemed legit, but I would like to see more of the dragons, right? If you're going to use something like dragons, then use them, go all in on it. Like, let them permeate the whole empire. And, are they part of your transport system? Are they part of just your military? What do they do? Do you trade in dragon eggs? Give it your all. is would be my suggestion here. I would lean into that dragon aspect. All right, then we come to the Birch Shield Empire, which is the only empire where I summarized what is in the form because it was very detailed. I appreciated the Birch Shield Empire very much, but it was very, very detailed. Okay, so let's start with pioneering. So these guys are elves. This is an elven empire, so it's a non-human empire, and they have this matrilineal and matrilocal based culture, and it's a very stratified society under an elected queen. And they initially settle as this group of rejects on a barren island, and you wouldn't think that this is like ripe for empire, but then there is this volcanic eruption, right? And it opens the mouth of hell, which is a great way to start an empire, like no jokes, okay? And basically, the elves, turn like they become the defensive bulwark against this mouth of hell that is spitting out demons. And they have a polytheistic religion, and they kind of start recruiting people into that religion. And there's a couple of new castes that created, most importantly a postal runner caste, which will become important later. And they, while they don't conquer human or Moorish people, they focus on defending against this demon infested situation with the mouth of hell that has opened here. Okay, and then basically from my impression of it is that they then managed to kind of contain the mouth of hell or close it in some way, but now they have this big empire that has trade with the dwarves and with the humans and so on. And they go from being a warrior-led culture during their commerce, affluence, and intellect phases. They go from being a warrior-led culture to a more mercantile culture. And those postal runners that I spoke about, as well as the merchants, become the kind of leaders of this group. And then and then eventually in decline. So what happens is the merchant postal class eventually completely takes over politically, and it breaks the society. And then there's a new enemy that emerges, which apparently is apparently this is set in our world, which is my first warning of this, because you have a rise of the Christian religion, which then basically becomes a different creates a different religious conflict. And and basically the Elven Empire declines, and they become weak. They're no longer a warrior culture. They're now this mercantile culture. And then that's the end of them. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a really interesting setup to the empire, because you have this mouth of hell situation that the empire has to deal with. I would say that if there's one thing that that you should look at doing, it is to potentially focus a little bit more on what was the effect around that mouth of hell, right? So there's now demons pouring out, and the elves, create this like barrier against these demons. what does everybody else feel about the elves doing this? Do they just kind of become the empire by de facto, or how did that situation play out? And also, what happened when the elves started to how did the elves close the mouth of hell? Is there like a mythos or a legend there? I feel like there is potential there for one heck of a legendary story that can be told, in secret by people who remember the Elven Empire or whatever, of like how the elves actually closed the mouth of hell. I also feel like the actual mouth of hell still existing in some way could be a great geographical feature of your world. So those are the places where I would focus for further development. But this was a really fun read. Matthew Hollis says, will you be accepting other empires like this in the future? I missed it. Matthew, I think I will. I'll run, I think I might run a couple of these kinds of like, send me this thing and I'll go through it. I might do it as well for like magic systems and so on. Although I will say that depending on the number of people who submit it, I might like only do X amount of them and so on. It depends on how many submissions I get. But yeah, I think I will run a few more of these. It was a lot of fun for me. I hope it's fun for you guys on the stream as well. Kinar says, what made you want to create your world? I think that is a question every world builder should answer. What made me want to create my world of Sangwheel Chronicles was I really wanted to tell a story of how the past affects the present, and of how, you need to understand and reckon with the past and move on into the future with that understanding, that the past has a continuous impact on the present, and that's kind of the main thing that I wanted to build into my world, which is why my world is built the way it is. Scoville Dynasty says, have you ever read the Book of the New Sun? There's some great decadence in that, where they literally eat the memories of the dead. Is the Book of the New Sun the one with Gene Wolf with like the Torturers Guild? I don't know. That might be what I'm thinking of. But yeah. Okay. So that was that was the which empire was this? I enjoyed them. The Birch Shield Empire. Yes. They were a lot of fun. All right, then we have the Thalris Empire. So the Thalris Empire is a kind of little bit more grounded empire. So they start as a kingdom, and war is waged, and they win, and off they go into they tripped and fell, and there was an empire. And then the sovereign dies, and there's a new sovereign who's like, I'm a build it out baby. And they basically just go into their expansionistic phase and become a continent spanning empire, from what I understand. And then they actually take steps to ensure that their empire is kind of integrated and have some say in local affairs, which also obviously leads to a more stable empire, which I appreciate, because not all empires were like, brutal fist to the face. The Persian Empire, especially under like Cyrus the Great, for example, was very kind of, I won't say inclusive. I mean, that's a very modern word, obviously, but they were a gentler empire, right? They basically reached out to people, and they did allow for like local governance, and they did give people kind of more kind of access to Cyrus the Great, for example, returned all the effigies of the gods to the local people. So your empire doesn't have to be like super oppressive, right? And that's what I appreciated about this entry, about the potato enjoyers entry, is that it it wasn't an empire that is like a fist to the face empire. It was a empire that did try to kind of have some elements of local governance and trade routes and so on. So I appreciated that. I appreciated the kind of different take on empire. And then, of course, you have like the affluent phase where you have your literacy exposed and so on. Um, and then in terms of the intellect, um, you have and you have then onwards from that, you have the schools being built and the Rhodonis experience and so on. So that was all like good, well thought out. And then we come to the decadence and decline. So basically here, there's a magical artifact that's been lost. And this was where I was like, okay, but now I want to know more. Where did the magical artifact come from? I wanted to be in the founding of the empire. If it's going to be so crucial to its loss, I want that magical artifact right up front in the founding. I want it to be a legendary thing. I want it to be like a physical mandate of heaven, and then when it's lost, then that begins the decline. And then of course, they're not all pleasure and happiness and so on, and they basically try and suppress the uprisings. And then in the decline, eventually they just let their empire go. Effectively, a kind of a British Empire, resolution, if you will, where they actually just grant independence to the various territories. So I enjoyed this very much. I wanted more fantasy, and I want that. And I think that the key to adding that additional fantasy is to put it up in the right up front in the founding of the empire with that magical artifact, like what that magical artifact was, what it meant to the empire, and how that brought the empire together. So that was my thoughts on them. And then we come, I think this is our last one, although I speak under correction. I can't remember exactly which one's the last one. All right, then pioneering and conquest. So this actually, as pioneering, just had the entry through the fire and the forge, we build our future, which I thought was interesting. And then it's like after the third burning of the Ironroot city, the Dominion began to push back against their aggressors. So clearly the Dominion are living in this Ironroot place, and they basically have this magic system where they have enslaved spirits that they put into constructs, and they push back against their aggressors. And that then leads to eventual conquest, where they actually now expand outwards from their previous position of oppression. And I think that this is also an interesting thought process. I mean, Rome was founded by people who fled Troy, right? The last remnants. I think quite often from the kind of oppression of a previous empire, a new empire will be born. That does happen quite frequently in our world as well, and I feel like that is a good origin purpose for your empire. So I appreciated that approach from this world builder. And then they have, they've got their spirit cores, and they're working with these constructs, and they're expanding into, the elven lands, and all of that's great. But then eventually they actually have an external interference of the Valtharan kingdoms. um, and they begin to actually enslave their mages, which is an interesting approach. And then this eventually leads to the internal strife and the decline of the empire. And that was the end of the Dominion. What I liked about the Dominion is I liked the idea of the constructs. I also liked the idea of the decline of the empire being tied into, then they weren't just enslaving their constructs, they were also enslaving their actual mages by the end of it, and that led to their decline. So those were the empires that were submitted to me. What did you guys think of them? Which ones did you like most? So I guess if I Thanks, Gary. I do think I will do this again. It was enormous fun. Um, so I do think I will do something like this again. I might do empires again. I might do some other world building elements. So we had the Aos Talu, who had the human empire that conquered the bird people, and we had um, the semi-Romanish nomadic empire with the horse people, and we had the Wush'oq, which is a very interesting empire. I think that was Alex's empire. Um, then we had the Enkarian Empire, the Restavan Empire that started out with dragons. Then we had the Birch Shield Empire, which was the elven guys. And then we had the Thalris Empire, which was the sovereigndoms that eventually kind of just dissolved its empire. And finally, we had the Dominion. Yeah, so for me, the winner for me was the one I liked the best. Let me rephrase that because it's the empire I like the best in terms of its fleshing out and so on is the Birch Shield Empire. I really like the concept of the empire starting because this mouth of hell opening, and then like the demons pouring out, and the empire starts almost a self-defense against it, and then they close the mouth of hell, presumably at the end of their conquest phase, and now whoops, we tripped and fell and defended the world, and now we have an empire, and how do you run this empire now? So I thought that was very interesting. And for me, that's the empire that I'm going to send my signed book to that world builder. As I say, there are still things I would do. Like I would also try and work on that. Like why is it set in our world specifically? And there's additional things that I would do with it. But I thought that was a well thought out empire. Yeah, so that was the end of the Empire series, and so congratulations to the person who invented the Birch Shield Elven Empire, and I'll be in touch via email. Yeah, so I will be doing something like this again. I think it was great fun, and it's a nice streaming it's a nice easy stream in a way, like read a bunch of empires and be like, well, or a bunch of world building things and be like, well, I like this, I like that, I like this, and this is the one that resonated most with me. So um and yeah, and I think that it's a good activity for all of the community as well. To see other people's world building always helps to kind of build your own ideas and thoughts and your processes as well, to see like where you potentially have holes in your own empire and to build on those elements. So I think that it's a good activity all around. And then other than that, as I said, the Ancient Lore series kicked off on Tuesday, so I hope that you all enjoyed that first episode. And we have 6 weeks of episodes scheduled for that series. And you are very welcome, Potato Enjoyer. I hope that my feedback worked for you. David, I did go through your empire. So it was actually first up. So you might want to just rewatch the stream and go through that, because I thought it was cute. I know it's your empire because we've spoken about it before in Discord. Those of you who are not on Discord, links down below and all that. And yeah, next week we'll see the first of the podcast, the World Building Blueprints podcast. We'll see the first of the economics part of that. And it's gonna that will actually be the end. We'll be then quite close to the end of the non-fiction How to World Build book that I'm working on. So I will be looking for beta readers for that within the next few months. And so if you're interested in that, keep an eye out. I will post in YouTube when I'm looking for beta readers for that. And then I'll just create like a special form where you can submit and be part of the beta reading for that book, which will then be a comprehensive book on how to world build, and it'll take you through the whole process of creating cultures and economies and characters and everything else. So yeah, that's actually why I created the whole world building blueprints series, is to write that book. So, and there's my cat right at the end to keep you guys entertained with a stream. And yeah, then I guess I will see you soon for next month's stream. And I hope yeah, have a very, very good weekend, guys. I hope everybody has a fun Sunday lined up. Cool. Bye.